Oh, is that right?
There.
Still didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Now what do I do that? I don't know. How you doing, guy?
Good.
Good.
People recovering in the household.
Yeah, Abby's fine. We just didn't get to touch.
How many days has it been?
Since Wednesday.
Wow.
And we've been calling and they said, well, we just don't have the back.
Really? Wow.
Everybody's fine except for her. She's still a little stuffy.
Are they just overwhelmed with these places and that's why they're not getting
And they're not giving us an excuse. They're just saying, you know, we just
2 to
want.
7 days.
Wow.
Well, they said, told us 1 to 2.
I know, hey, that's what they tell you, but then when you get to look on the lap, the thing, it says, oh, it's 2 to 7.
So we were supposed to have everybody over and we're like, we can't.
Oh, did you cancel?
Yeah, so we postponed it. We're like, we just can't do that.
Yeah. Well, so
It's about
Yeah, we thought we were gonna have it until yesterday, and then we gave it till, I don't know, 3. No, we don't have a choice.
yeah. Let's do another weekend.
Yeah.
Was it? This is your first time to host, isn't it?
Sure wasn't just nervous that we're gonna trash your
We're
house.
gonna set up a tent.
Their house.
Happy when you fix it. You do now, right?
You guys want to get going with prayer requests?
Good. With the busyness of the week, I asked Scott to help me out. I appreciate his efforts with this. Got a good lesson first point today. So yeah, we'll get some prayer requests and then we can jump into this lesson over there. I've got a wedding at 5, so if you think about that, it's probably not go well tonight. It's outdoor. It's supposed to be like Kevin Macy. It's supposed to be like 85. So pray the Lord will bless. I don't give the gospel, obviously. Yeah, I'm a crowd of people like that. You don't give the gospel. Hey, Andrew.
Yes, there is.
I
I just put Abby on there.
He's ready for Abby. Yeah.
You continue to pray for my brother too. Actually, he is improving. Slow and sure.
Pray for the missions conference too. Missioners will be coming in tonight. I'm gonna meet with them about 7. And, just kind of get acquainted time and get to know them a little bit before tomorrow. So just pray God will really touch the conference and give us the best conference that we've ever had. I'm very optimistic about it. God's gonna touch it this week. So pray for that. Anything else?
Praise, my son Trent got engaged.
Okay, good.
So,
That's exciting.
yeah, it is. You know, for all of mom and dad's talking about, it's like, yeah, you're not gonna just meet somebody in high school and get married. It's just not gonna happen. It's like, met somebody in high school, neither one of them was dated or done anything with anybody else. No, yeah, it's good. To get married.
Oh, that's exciting.
Anything else? Hey, Andrew. Yeah, I see you wherever spots. Yeah, that's fine. Anything else?
Andrew's mom.
She ate some green beans last night with plates, and that's how they little things.
Yeah.
It's good. And she had apple slices and pulled pork the night before. So
Yeah.
it says you can go home anytime, but generally likes to get stronger. Yes, for a couple more months. Just pray for mom. That's what I heard at night. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
that's when she gets scared.
What was she battling?
What's that?
What was she battling?
Well, she has snus in her back and drop foot. Her right foot like sags, so she can't walk anymore. There's a lot of things wrong. She has some cognitive issues. Just Joe and I try to be there for as much as we can. She wants to be home, so we're gonna try to do that more. Just pray for us. She's really got a tender heart towards the Lord. She's been good right there. And Alan Jackson, Precious Memories CD. He made a second one, so she listens to that now.
Okay.
A friend of hers got an Elvis gospel CD, and mom knew all them songs. The one about crying in the chapel, it's a really neat song, and every heard of it. Mom sang every word. Wow. She has a roommate now for the staff instead of limited, and I think it's kind of good for both of them. I think these hymns are being a blessing to this lady next to mom.
Yeah.
Good. But she enjoyed talking to you the other night.
Yeah, that was special. Thanks
Yeah.
for setting that up. Yeah, that was nice.
She loves pudding. We're gonna get her stuff for Christmas, too. So
Well, do you have, can you pray for requests this morning? Dearly Father, Lord, thank you for what you do for us. Thank you for the opportunity and privilege we have to be here together. This Bible study. Pray that you be with Brother Scott as he teaches us this morning, that you guide and direct every word that he says, that our hearts will be open and receptive, and Lord, we become stronger and draw closer to you as a result of us this morning. We do think of these requests today, Lord, and our pastors who will travel down to Robinson for the wedding today, and ask that you just give him traveling mercies and give him wisdom as he directs the wedding, and all will go well. And I pray for Kevin and Macy as they begin their lives. Kevin now is a couple, Lord, as you bless them and help them to devote their lives to you, Lord. Keep you first in everything that they do. Their marriage would be a godly one and one that would be pleasing and acceptable. Lord, do continue to pray for Abby. She touch her body, Lord, help her heal up if the result will come back negative, that you okay to carry on. Be with God, Lord, give him wisdom as he directs his family. Lord, I continue to pray for brother, Lord, that you continue to heal him up, Lord. I thank you for the progress that he's made and that you continue to be with him. And then, Lord, we think of Scott's son getting engaged, Lord. Thank you for that. I pray that you bless that situation as well as the preparations now for the wedding. In their lives together, Lord, to serve you. Lord, continue to pray for Nancy and ask you to be with her. Just continue to heal up, Lord, that she be able to come home soon. Give Joe and her wisdom, Lord, to help her and to be a blessing to her and get what they can. I think Brother Eric this morning and ask him to be with him, to help him, Lord. Pray that he might have a measure of health and be able to be with us tomorrow at church. Lord, very especially now for the mission conference that starts tomorrow. Lord, be with the missionaries as they travel today. That you give them safety coming in. The most important, Lord, prepare our church, Lord, for this conference. Lord, prepare the hearts of all of our people, that we would truly have a renewed burden, renewed vision for missions. Lord, we see how you blessed our church as a result of the heart the pastor and our church has for missions, Lord. Help us to always keep that in the forefront of our minds, especially these next few days, Lord. Just pray that you bless in a special way. It will be the best conference we've had to this day. Thank you now again for all you do for us. We love you. Thank you. In Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. All right. Well, I've got a lesson this morning that it's not quite a full follow-up to last week, but it tags on to some of the things that we were talking about. And who remembers what we were talking about last week? name of the title of it or?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So what was that?
We were,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
that's okay.
Fine, we'll get asked.
We were discussing, where's the syndrome come from, and some of the traits of it, and we likened it to an actual grasshopper. Some of the things that are characteristic of that insect.
Yeah. Yeah, they felt like they were weak.
Yeah.
They were too weak to go in, and that's how they were viewed by everybody else. So, yeah, thank you. And it was just, it was since, many of them did not consider God on their side. They weren't accounting the thing that was going to put them over the top the next thing, the instant winner every single time. And it was just that lack of the faith or trust. And you also wonder about, it wasn't, and this was for going into the promised land. And it wasn't just that, but there's probably not just those 12 spies. There's a bunch of people that heard the testimony and were persuaded, and, either in a positive way or a negative way. And then, but it also, the same thing, that they didn't have the faith, that was what was leading, and then others not having that faith. Just even after they'd seen all the things that they'd already seen, and they were, pressured into it probably just by fear, or, and there's probably a lot of talking going on just between everybody. And I look at that as just, that's a peer pressure. And I mean, what do you normally think of when you think of peer pressure?
Going along with the crowd, whatever they're doing, kind of, we tend to follow,
Yeah.
do what they're doing. Be better and different.
Along those lines, being the only one with a different opinion in the group, I guess.
Seems like normally you think of that being pressured into something evil. I guess it could be a positive thing, but normally it's pressure to sin.
Yeah, definitely. Those are all great answers. And, I'm always thinking about it in terms of, like, I don't know why it always comes to mind, but just like children in school, or in a school setting, or, where you're just kind of pressured to go along with something or do something. And it's, we spend a lot of time trying to teach our kids to not be subject to that. I mean, you can't help but feel the pressure, but just to be able to go against that trend, and to make sure they're acting appropriately. So, but that peer pressure, it cuts. It's not just for children. I mean, that cuts across all ages, all demographics, all situations, and it can be different things. How you dress at work, how you act at church, there's some peer pressure involved there. So I would say, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but we'll expand that out. So a little bit, it's like, what kind of peer pressures are there? You just said there was the negative peer pressure. There's some others.
Well,
Go ahead, spit it out.
Obviously, the opposite negative. Positive.
That's absolutely, yep. And one more right in between. Neutral. Yeah, it's, the neutral one would just be like, how you, I would just say an example, how you dress. It's not really positive. I mean, unless it's an inappropriate dress, but I mean, just like, oh, like you have you look nice at church, so put on, dress nicer and some things like that. So, that would be, I would say, a neutral one. Positive ones, again, that's when we're trying to be ready. He said, just go have an opinion that's going against everybody else and be able to stick with it and not be influenced by others. But The biggest problem one is the negative one, which can lead us to going against our convictions, our beliefs, our thought processes, everything, that we've been maybe raised or taught to do or should be doing. That negative peer pressure can cut against that. And so today's study is going to be about the 4 young men that were taken out of Jerusalem into captivity. And, they were 4 young men who said no, cut against the grain, who set the pace they were leading. And let's go ahead and turn to Daniel chapter 1. And just picking up the story here, where we're about to be taken into captivity, and the setup for that is God can warn you, and eventually His justice is going to take over for His grace. And so, no matter, even if you are been following all the rules and laws and everything through that point, God is still going to take the whole, and you're going to get punished through that, or things are going to happen to you that may not, that you weren't open for. And in this case, we've got the best and the brightest that will be taken. These are the, got athletic capabilities, intellect, looking. We've got, they mentioned just about every positive characteristic that you would see, which is kind of a shrewd move on Nebuchadnezzar's part, but of taking their finest and then using them for his purposes, in his kingdom. So we're going to break up the reading into 3 parts, and I'll start with verses 1 through 7, and we'd like to look at some of the things that Daniel was facing during this time. So be thinking about that while we're reading, and we'll just take turns reading it down there. Ron, if you mind starting, and then we'll just go around.
Just one verse.
Just one at a time.
In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and Jerusalem, and besieged it.
And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God.
And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and the king's seed, and of the princes.
Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans.
And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king.
Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego.
Okay, thank you. So what were some of the things these young boys were facing? Just doesn't necessarily have to be all spiritual, like the whole, just things surrounding about what was happening to them.
It's a brand new culture.
Yep. Anything else?
Well, they knew they were being groomed for a certain purpose. They had to have known that. So there's like this trial time, and then at the end, they're going to be tested. They're going before the king.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they knew that they were going to do that. And you don't perform well, I mean, what's going to happen to you? I don't know. But what are the standards? I mean,
Kind of like Nebuchadnezzar's academy, but there's a punishment at the end.
Right.
For not performing.
And I think to add to that, there's a application to all of us that life is that season, that, you know, that time, that testing, trying time when we will ultimately stand before not Nebuchadnezzar, but the King of Kings and give an account for what we've done, you know, with our life and opportunity. It's a good parallel.
Absolutely. So the first blank I was looking at, hit on it, and the answers here was those prevailing circumstances. That's what Daniel was facing, and that's the kind of your basis of, your peer pressure. That's what's going on around you. And so, you just see the, it's 4 young men and just being, they were considered the brightest, and then, but they were young men, and they're brought into, they were surrounded by adult situations, and and they were trying to maintain their standards even then. And if those young men can prevail, I would think that we can have some measure of determination that we can as well, because we're in a culture right now that it's completely opposite of, it's almost like I don't recognize the country. It's like, last night I watched an old movie with my wife, just something from the late 30s, and it's just like the flag was displayed with pride, and it's just like, wow, I miss that country. but anyhow, so we're gonna be facing that right now, and it's going to be up to us to kind of hold the line as best we're able to. And it's easy. I mean, it's very comfortable. When I come here to church or Sundays or Wednesdays, I love being surrounded by Christians. There's a comfort. It's just like, that's going to be nice to be in heaven. Just just to have this, you can my wife can leave her purse out and not worry about it. All these different things that you normally can't do. And it's easy to praise God. It's easy to praise and be joyful in that situation. But we're in a sea of pagans to much extent, and that's where again, it's easy to be the positive, have the positive peer pressure here and do that. But we're mostly going to be faced with the opposite in our work life and every place else that we are. So. It's our spiritual integrity depends on how we behave when we're swimming against the current. Daniel was, at least for most of the stuff I was reading, but he was 14 years old when he was taken into captivity. So that's an awful young age for all those things to be happening to. So let's pick up at we'll read verses 8 through 16. I forget what we left off there.
Yeah, I can start it. Okay. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself.
Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs.
And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then ye shall make me endanger my head to the king.
Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us supposed to eat and water to drink.
Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, in the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat. And as thou seest, deal with thy servants.
So he consented unto them in this matter and proved them 10 days.
And at the end of the 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat.
Thus no Lord took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink and gave them pulse.
Okay, so what do you think Daniel was feeling in this situation here? He's obviously taken some action, but yeah, what was he feeling and what brought him to take some action?
One, he's being pressured by the prince of the eunuchs to conform to what the program was.
Yeah. So that was absolutely it. It was that was the answer to the blank. It's pressure to compromise. It was, he was surrounded by all temptations, all evil, all ungodliness. And we, you and I are faced with that in our home, our work, school, whatever situation. And they were offered, food and drink, some of the richest food, some of the, best drink, all the situation. And that's one of those ones, it seems like a little thing, but it's one of those ones where it's like, it's just food, Why just, why not compromise there or what? And, but.
It's just a vaccine, right?
Yeah. There you go again. But, they were being pressured to forget that they were the servants of the Most High. They were completely, they even changed all of their names. Can you imagine just being pulled away from your parents? You're stuck in a different country, different culture, totally different situation. Your rigorous training, your food's changed, everything, even your name. I can't imagine just, called something else, after that much time in my life. And it wasn't just that, but it's like, Daniel's name, which means God is my judge, was changed to Belshazzar, which is Baal protect the king, pagan God. That was just evil. It's just like everything, something you hear every single day is your name is something that's associated with godliness, associated with the opposite. And I think when the devil pressures you to compromise, he really tries to shake the ground around you, something to make you a little bit unstable. These guys certainly took a ground shaking. And then the devil always seems to offer some type of a fake rope, some type of fake thing that will lead you into, further compromise. And that just, and those boys were thrown into that because the Israelites, they compromised. They continued to compromise and got put into that situation. But, and I'm sure, Daniel looked around. When he saw, I'm sure he saw other Jews that were taken into captivity, and probably some of them, many of them probably compromised as well. And we probably see that, there's times that, you find a Christian at work or some, you think is that way, and then their behavior changes in certain things. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but it's just like you have to judge. I have to make a judgment call when I go to a red light. So, but it's like I thought they were a Christian. It's like you see the same thing in your neighborhoods or work, school, whatever. And I'm sure that can be discouraging. That kind of forces you against kind of falling in with them, but. They were going against that. And the one key thing out of those verses that verse 12 was, Daniel objected, I thought, but without being objectionable, and we can do that in the way, I don't think we have to, pound the table and tell somebody that they're going to hell. There's better ways of doing that, or better ways of engaging people in conversation. I thought it was brilliant, what he was on. It's like, hey, just change our food, and just watch, see how we are. And you know, on the surface, that was the case, but deeper down, what he was displaying was a faith in God that he was going to make those changes happen. He was going to make it work out because he had a deep faith in God, that he wasn't putting his trust just in the food. He really put his trust in God, I think, to be, you know, released. And it was a small action, but definitely he trusted God in that small situation. And just, you know, some of the takeaways, just, you know, when you don't compromise in the, you know, God's favor will come on you, even no matter how difficult it is. You will be favored. So, and we're not going to reread. It's kind of going back because there's cases where Daniel was displaying what we'll be talking about here. But let's just pick up at verse 17 and read through the end of the chapter.
As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams.
Now, at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar.
And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king.
And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in his realm.
And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus.
So the kind of the questions, what was Daniel displaying throughout this period? And we were seeing the different characteristics.
I think Daniel was an extremely brilliant leader because he purposed in his heart, but the other 3 didn't. So he was leading them and they were following.
And yes, exactly it. Any others on the same lines there?
Confidence and standards and trust.
I've never thought of it like this before, but he had absolute resolve, because I hadn't thought about this. What if he asked and they said no, and he came back with a solution and they said yes? If they said no to that, I'm convinced he would have not. He purposed to not defile himself. He wouldn't have eaten of the meat and probably would have killed, because on 2 occasions later, his friends were told to bow down or die. He chose to die. They didn't die. They chose to die. And then Daniel again would pray the same thing. He had absolute resolve.
Yeah, and that's you know, it's all the same answer, but it was conviction. Yeah, resolve, conviction, leadership. They were, you know, that's what he was displaying throughout that. And just some you know, we just see those, and that conviction is also a faith and a trust in God. And you know, so again, you know, in our present daily lives, you know, there's lots of things that we can take away. And you know, this was a comparatively small thing, and it was easy to justify, but he remained faithful. What are some other takeaways? Application for, you know, our present day lives, how we should be behaving and doing things.
God takes care of his own.
It's not going to be easy. You know, we have the advantage of seeing the end of this, and that God blesses Daniel. But you know, if you're in that situation, it's so hard. Yeah, it's hard for kids to stand up against peer pressure. It's hard for adults to stand up against peer pressure. And, you don't want to be the oddball, you don't want to be, you don't want to make waves. But yeah, it's gonna be tough, but God will give you the strength to stand.
Kind of along the lines of what you're saying, Jesse, is just like when God, and you can find it throughout scripture, it's like when God trusts you with a little, and when you prove trustworthy with a little, usually it's much more comes your way to be entrusted to. And those 4 young men were given prominent positions in his kingdom, and I didn't have all of the references, but I was trying to find out, because it said and Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus. So it's like even unto, it's like, and then you go back and look around, it's like it was 60 years, 60, more than 60 years that he was the number 2 man in, all the kingdom. It's like, I don't know about you, but if I had choices of commanding officer, executive officer, I'll take executive officer every time. I'll be the number 2 man and just get all the privileges, and but you don't have to take the fun. But I mean, he was in that spot, and that is hard with all of the, because there's political type things going on there. You have people obviously through, remember through the rest of the stories, that were gunning for him and that were doing specific things to take him down. And what was neat, I thought, was here was a little thing that he started out with at age 14. And then I think when he was, in the lion's den, he was like an 80-year-old man, by that time. And that was a big thing of, turning to worship the image, and he didn't compromise in a big thing, and just showed, faithfulness just all the way through. And so just, don't learn to tolerate small compromises, because they're always going to lead to larger compromises later, or just it's such a struggle. If you get it in one area, then to stop and not compromise in some other area. And, any other takeaways that you might see out of that?
More of a question, what do you think about his attitude? He's taken away from everything and he's placed here, and he says to the one over him, he says, "Thy servants," for himself, in a place of submission. I don't see anywhere in this book where he was very angry or upset. This isn't fair, this isn't just. That's a hard one for me.
I would find it very difficult not to have some underlying bitterness or anything. And you see that same characteristic for Joseph when he was, put in prison. It wasn't like, it was like, hey, I want to be the best prisoner in here.
And he was.
Yeah. But yeah, that's having a good attitude.
Yeah, I want to add to that. You see Christians that take a strong stand on things. Sometimes the spirit in which they take that stand is very repulsive. So I think you're seeing, whether it be Joseph or Daniel, that they had very strong personal convictions, but the way they conveyed that was very gracious. And
Gracious and winsome.
Yeah, we've all met people that's like, they just rub you the wrong way, because it's like kind of the holier than thou mentality.
Yeah.
We should be separated, we should be holy and righteous, but we should also have a good spirit of grace and realize that, maybe not everybody else is at that point, or, God hasn't convicted them about that like he has me, but just having the right spirit to go along with it, I think is really important.
Thinking my mom, and she's facing my mind's den, stuff this year. It's been it's one thing after another. And sometimes she'll get a little bit cold. You put that music on, and just like parts off and stuff quick. Say, I'm sorry for it. And she'll start talking over out loud.
Yeah.
It's just something to watch. It's like walking towards something.
And that's pretty neat. That's a nice reminder for her too.
Yeah.
One more, I'm sorry. I wasn't making fun of this law school talk too much. It's class. I won't repeat the names. But I really think it's important for verse 4, when the king was looking for someone skillful, wisdom, cunning knowledge, and understanding science. That had a foundation before any of this happened. He wasn't sitting back watching TV, not because he wasn't then, but because he wasn't enjoying those types of things. He was, knowledge and wisdom weren't just handed to him and he had all this understanding in science. He was doing things that other kids probably weren't, studying, applying himself. And who's the giver of all that? God. So he was asking God for wisdom. He was getting it because he was applying himself and had a great foundation. It's like, what are we doing in our spare time? So when these times come, we're ready.
That's a great point. But and just like, what you just said there about those little things of faith and asking God, hey, give me wisdom, show me how to use my time. God, help me not to compromise it. It's all those small actions that lead up to, large changes, when it's like building at an atomic, small level, so that you're got the strength to go and do whatever you're supposed to do later on. So I like that reference.
Even since, sorry, to interrupt, talking
Go for it. I'm glad I'm not.
But just living by principle and not by pleasure. We as men, we understand the draw of a good steak, and things of this life. When he's talking about the pulse, that's the veggies. It's just not the same appeal. So I think learning to die to self and say no to the flesh is really important in all this, and that's easier said than done. The flesh is, I say weak, but also strong. The pull of the flesh is really strong. And he was, he was a guy just like everybody else is a guy, and so that would have been hard to say no to all that.
And all good points. I appreciate everybody's contributions on this. And I want to close with the verse, 1 Samuel 2:30. It says, wherefore the Lord God of Israel saith, I said indeed that thy house and the house of thy father should walk before me forever. But now the Lord saith, be it far from me, for them that honor me, I will honor, and they that despise me shall be lightly esteemed. That's good. So, thanks for contributions today. That's interesting. I love hearing all the different thoughts, because it's like even just studying this, there's things that I hadn't even thought. I've heard this passage so many times, and sometimes you get to dig a little bit deeper, you pick up a little bit more than everybody else has other things that are added to it, makes it that much richer. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for your time. Takes a lot of time to put something like this together, and appreciate that. For me, I needed that. That was like spot on today. Just needed that. So appreciate it. Why don't we close in prayer? Father, thank you that we have this time as men to study your word. And now we challenge the Lord to live it. We can study it and know it, but not do it. So give us the boldness and the courage and the strength that we need, Lord, to stand for you and to stand in grace. Lord, may we have the right spirit, or may we recognize our influence, as was mentioned, that it wasn't just Daniel, it was his friends, and he was the leader out of the four. And so, Lord, help us to lead our families, help us to be leaders in this church. Lord, give us wisdom on where to stand. Obviously, in the passage, there were some things that were beyond Daniel's control, but there were some things he could control. And in those areas, he was willing to do the right thing. Thank you for the promise of the blessing. And Lord, help us to keep our eyes on you. Thank you for what Daniel's name means, that God is our judge. And Lord, we stand before men in this life, but we look forward to that judgment day when we'll stand before you and give an account for our stewardship, our decisions, even the gifts and abilities you've blessed us with, and how we have used those for your honor and glory. And that's a sobering thing. So help us today, Lord, to live out these truths. We do thank you for Scott and the time and effort and the spirit in which he's given the lesson today. It's a great blessing to us. And we ask that you would guide our steps. Lord, again, touch the conference and the Lord's Day tomorrow. Give safety to our speakers as they come in Christ's name. Amen. Thanks, guys.